Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IC Topic Chats. It's July 21st, 2022, and we are talking about the side hustle. And I am fiddling around with my controls today, make sure I can figure out how to I've got every screen open, and I only have one. I'm on a laptop, so I don't know how that's going to work. So I'm going to try and do this. If somebody has any issues, come on site and let me know. Anyhow, I'm gonna get started here. So when we're talking about the side hustle, generally we're talking about doing a side work in addition to your current job, perhaps with the idea of just making some extra cash, or with the idea of developing some work, enough work to maybe perhaps pursue this work as a full-time gig down the road. We've done sessions in the past about one-person operations versus firm, so solopreneurship versus a firm identity. And so this is kind of the scale back to how do you get started? How do you initiate this sort of thing? And you know, I think everybody here who has a full-time gig started with a side hustle. My story was I was working as a director of institutional research. We heard that earlier, and that I think Helen was talking about that. And I had been working as a program evaluator as a grad student in my doctoral program. And so I had the experience. And so as a director of institutional research, my provost had a grant that came to the university, to the college where I was, and said, hey, can you help these people out? Because they don't know what they're doing with program evaluation. And I said, well, sure, it's what I do. And they really didn't. And one thing led to another. And that started my journey. I worked on that one program. They wrote another grant proposal, wrote me into it. That got funded. Some people found out about me. And then it just kind of ball started rolling, and that was my story. But I was thinking about this, and I'm able to reflect this fairly personally right now, because my wife has left her full-time position and she started a full-time job, but she's actually kind of still in the side hustle phase where she's developing completely new contracts, because we're in a position where she was able to do that without, she was able to leave and start her thing without too much of a kickback on our family. But she's in the side hustle phase, trying to get something started, so she's full-time focused on it. So the first question you got to ask yourself, can you in fact hustle? Meaning, do you have the capacity to do a side hustle? And you've got to think about whether you have the time for it, because this is going to be, if you have a full-time job, this is going to happen in addition to your full-time job. You need to be concerned about the conflicts of interest to your current employer. Nobody wants you paying you to work to find another job. And I think I have that plan again too. What are those conflicts of interest? And if you come to work for me in my firm, I don't want you doing a side hustle, doing the same work, because you're effectively competing with me. And so there's a problem with that. What are there other conflicts of interest that you can't go into, because I don't know what they might be, but you need to make sure that whatever kind of work you want to do isn't going to conflict with something else related to your family, related to your job, those sorts of things. Does your employer have a non-compete? If you in fact get the work going on the side, is your employer going to restrict you from doing that kind of work and leaving your current job? Again, I have a non-compete for my employees because I want them to focus their energies towards the firm. And it's not just about me. It's not about me, the owner. It's about the firm as a whole. It's about all the employees benefiting from each other's efforts, right? So if we pour our energies into the firm grows and everybody benefits. But if you have a non-compete, you really can't and shouldn't be doing the side hustle. So what's the next step? How do I start? So one of those things is you need to understand where you're going to focus your energies. What is your niche? I have a whole session on niche. So if you type in IC Topic Chat niche, you will see some of these things. But basically, you need to make sure you're focusing your energies. For us, it's about program evaluation or data analysis skills on three things that you enjoy, that you're good at and where there's some sort of financial compensation for it. So make sure you're thinking about all those things. If one of those things aren't in place, if you don't enjoy it, there's not money there. If you're no good at it, it's not going to be a sustainable venture. You start by connecting with your community, and well, welcome, here you are. And we actually started off by talking about who's in our community, at least the community present on the IC topic chat today. So your community could be anyone. I would say you should involve people from who you went to grad school with, former employers, you want to connect with your local affiliates. You want to connect with anyone who you've worked with that's not going to be a conflict with your job or anything else that's going on. It's not that difficult to just reach out and say, hey, we should get a cup of coffee. We should connect and just talk about what I'm doing. When you're there, I know this is an uncomfortable thing. You don't start off by saying, I'm trying to start a practice and I need your help. These things are logical and they come naturally because we're human beings and we're connecting around just for friendly reasons. Now the premise of the meeting may be because you're starting a practice and you want to get some ideas. This reminds me of, as I'm having this conversation, I'm reminded of when I went to a conference early on in my career and we were with some program officers and I was like, ooh, program officers, they've got money. And one of the greatest quotes that this one program officer gave back to us was, people who come asking for money get advice, and people who ask for advice get money. So start your conversations with these connections and anybody who may be perhaps a contact in your evolving consulting practice around just asking questions. I'm here to try and figure some things out. Do you know some things about how I can get this started? So what you should do is go for coffee, go for a walk, have some web meetings, just connect with people. Again, if you've been developing your general professional self over the years by giving back to others and being collaborative in the work and just being an all-around decent person, these should just be a natural extension of your relationship with people that already existed. If you worked on projects in a group project in graduate school, those people you worked with know you and like you. Hypothetically, I think that they should, and they should be interested in finding out what you're up to. And now that you're probably in different parts of the country, or you've had different types of careers, maybe you've gotten married or you've had children, or other kinds of life events, probably just want to catch up and talk anyway, and this is a good opportunity to do that. All right. Let's see here. So what do I do when I go to that first meeting? First, you want to prepare before you go to the meeting. You want to think about who those people are, who that person is that you're meeting with, how well do you know them? What are some things that you should just be interested to know? I would start by looking at their LinkedIn profile so that you know where they work. This may or may not be somebody that's like your good buddy. I had some meetings yesterday with some staffers whom I've never known or never met yesterday here on the Hill in the Hart Senate office building. And I was looking them up through LinkedIn just to know, where did they go to school? What do I have in common with them? So you could have just genuine conversation. When you're at that meeting, you probably just want to start by having some small talk, connect around those shared interests. I know this is probably really basic stuff, but I think it's nice to hear this again too, because not everybody just wants to dive into the deep end and start talking about this. And as I've learned, it depends on who you're with. When I have some connections with some people who are from the Middle East, very, very, I mean, great. They're based in New York City now, but it takes a good 15 minutes of small talk before we can get into any business, because that's just their culture. So understand a little bit about the culture of the person you're working with. In fact, I was getting impatient with the last meeting. I was like, I only have an hour. How are we going to get through this meeting if we're doing all this small talk? But that meeting went an hour and a half, by the way. So also understand that. Make sure you're not spending the entire time talking about yourself, right? I put briefly in caps here for a reason. The premise is for you to talk about what you're doing and and maybe get some ideas, but go through that and certainly let them ask you questions, let them engage with you about your interests, but don't spend the whole time on a one-way conversation with them, right? So then you listen, let them talk themselves into working with you. Perhaps they have a project for you, or they have an idea for how you can develop your practice. And so that's how you want to think about this. And then before you leave, make a plan to reconnect. Hey, I'll send you an email. Hey, let's get together next month. I love this. I like Thursday walks. Let's go for walks every Thursday, or once a month we should go for a walk in the park because I need the exercise or whatever. But it's make sure you're not leaving and just saying, all right, bye, I guess we'll connect maybe. You make a plan to reconnect. It's kind of like first date theory here in some ways too. I mean, this is a bit like a relation. This is a relationship, not a romantic relationship, but it's a relationship you're trying to cultivate so that you might have an opportunity to, develop something in the future. At a certain point, it's going to be on them to say, hey, I really liked meeting with Matt, or and he's such a wonderful guy. I could really see how he would work into this thing that I'm working on, or so and so is working on, and I want to help them out and try and connect them to these things. So, pay. Make sure you're paying for their meal or their coffee. Make sure you're paying for it, or at least offer to do it. If you're working with an old professor who always takes care of you, that's the sort of thing that some old faculty do. Try and aggressively say, I'll pay it. No, this is on me, right? But if remember, this is their meeting, not yours, right? They're making time to meet with you to help you out. So the least you can do is pay for their coffee. Yeah, you never really know how these goes, but you definitely want to invest in these little things by just paying for the meal or paying for the cup of coffee. So when you go to the second meeting, you want to make sure you're following up, or to have a second meeting, you want to make sure you follow up with them within 48 hours, right? Usually by an email or whatever mode of communication works best for you, but usually it's some sort of an email. You definitely want to do something that's going to, engender some sort of like kind thoughts or feelings or something like that. So when you follow up with them, send them something that's going to engage them. So for me, a lot of people say, oh, I never heard about that instrument. I'll talk about like the Friday Institute. That's a STEM focused research institute in North Carolina and at NC State. And so they have just a plethora of instruments and resources. So I can easily find something there that most people have never heard of that I use. And Ann Price's 23-year-old bought her dinner last weekend. Isn't that great? But anyway, I generally send along a valuable resource. If you don't have that, think about an article that was relevant to your conversation. If you don't have a kind of little library of articles, you should get one, because you should have these anyway, because we're often referencing these things in our work. Was there something else that was discussed at the meeting? Is there an expectation? Sometimes people are saying, yeah, go ahead and send me a proposal. Be sure to send them a proposal, right? Don't take a long time to do that. Get right back in touch with them, because what's the phrase, hit while the iron is hot. The iron's hot. Make sure if they say we would like to see something, or I can see us working together, don't let that one sit around for too long, because they're going to move on. We're all very busy people. And the most successful people who have the most opportunity to do things with you or for you, they're very busy, and they're gonna move on. If you give them too much time, they're gonna forget about you, or the opportunity might grow stale. So if they say, send me a proposal, or give me some ideas, or some thoughts about how we might be able to do it, don't let that one sit around for too long. So let's say they say, let's get some work together. How does this work? How does this look? So some strategies to get some work going, or to kind of initiate something when it feels like you're kind of just talking to each other, but nothing's happening. You're in that situation. Consider pro bono. I have this highlighted because this is a link to the pro bono workshop or a topic chat that we did a while ago. Consider helping them with grant writing. If anybody's been paying attention to the ICTIG listserv through AEA. There's a whole bunch going on about grant writing. And guess what? I'm going to make sure we do an IC topic chat on grant writing. When I say grant writing, I mean they're typically doing the lion's share of the grant writing. You're providing support to them by creating an evaluation section to support them. So in my work, a lot of work is National Science Foundation, U.S. Department of Education, Department of Defense. There's a requirement to write this big old, very complicated and well thought out proposal, but they have oftentimes a requirement for the evaluation to be external third party, and they may be looking for somebody to support that. So is there a way for you to do some support for somebody else's grant writing by providing that? And that should often be, the way I do it is pro bono. We're in this together. Some people will charge for their grant writing, make sure that that makes sense, and that that's not chasing people away. You don't want to create a barrier to work because you need, $500 to write 2 pages. I think that that's probably not a good strategy. Unless you're making a lot of money off of grant writing, you should probably be doing it, in my mind, for free, because what happens on the tail end of grant writing is you get projects that are, years, maybe 3 to 5 years of work. The other thing about grant writing is make sure you know what grants are out there for your clients and within your niche. So I'm often sending recommendations to folks saying, hey, did you know that the National Science Foundation Noise Grant's coming up, which it is next month, and are you writing for that? And if I bring those to them, they're often like, oh, what a great idea, I should be writing for that grant. And then, of course, they're going to be inclined to involve you with that process. When you get that first contract, a couple thoughts. Make sure you revisit the IC Topic Chat contract sessions, and I'll put those links in the chat. Those sessions kind of share how to develop a contract. Some of that was from Melanie Wallach's work and Gail Barrington's work, and some other things that I've created. But understand what kind of things should go into a contract. Think about your rates, and also think about the rate conversation that we have as an IC Topic Chat as well. What are you going to charge? Realize that what you charge now is kind of setting the standard for what they expect. If you're charging $50 per hour, which I think is too low for almost everybody involved here for various reasons, that's what they're going to expect you to charge in the future. I would say make sure you're thinking about a rate that's going to be future-proofed. You're probably not going to be able to raise your rates in the short term. Longer term, maybe. So think about that. And always remember to under-promise and over-deliver. Meaning, if you think it's going to take you 2 weeks, and that's a reasonable amount, you might say it will take a little bit longer just to give yourself buffer room, because we often don't know what we're getting ourselves into when we start these things off. The data may be dirty, it may be complicated. So these are the sorts of things we got to make sure we are accounting for, and then make sure whatever you plan to give them, it's at that level, if not a little bit of a surprise on something awesome that you do that's maybe a little bit better. Make sure that there's something there that's really going to provide the value for your services, because then when you come back and ask for the next contract, they're going to be inclined to do that. Particularly if you're working on a pro bono, that's your trial, that's your tryout. You're showing them how great you are at what you do. I feel like I need to say this about pro bono. When you're working on a pro bono contract, this is not a long-term thing. It's a short-term thing, and you are expressing back to them the value of your services so that they understand it, because otherwise you're just being taken advantage of if you're doing this for a long period of time. So a couple reflections on the side hustle. Make sure you have the time and ability to do these things, because this can be over and above your family commitments. It's going to be over and above your work that you're currently doing. So this is a hustle. That's the word. Use your community. Find those people that you know who could help you out, who may have some ideas about how to get yourself started. Work from what you know. That's kind of reflective back on the community. This is the niche. If you don't know anything about different types of I try and stay out of nonprofit social services evaluations, and I get asked about them from time to time. If it's not relevant to the work that I'm doing in education, then I think that we may not have a good fit, because there's just certain things I know there, and there's people I know, and there's a community of people that kind of support these things, and I'm able to pull people in from different avenues of that. So when it gets outside of my niche, I try and step away. You need grit. I mean, think about all the things about grit, about stick-intuitiveness. Don't be surprised when people ghost you for your Zoom call that you put together with somebody. This just happened to my wife, somebody she worked with for a number of years, who supported her previous work at another job. She wanted to connect with, and he genuinely wanted to connect with her, but something happened and he forgot. And so she just needed to follow up with him nicely and not get mad. And he said, "Oh, I'm so sorry. It was like one of those things." And we've all heard it before, but you need to have grit. You need to have stick-to-itiveness. You need to come back to it and realize you're going to write proposals that maybe they won't respond to you, or they'll get submitted and nothing will happen for a while. It took me, I think, 2 or 3 years of working on these NSF grants before I got my first, and then they started coming along quicker. So realize the startup is hard, but you just got to kind of keep coming back to it. Listen for how you can provide value. So you need to make sure this isn't about you, this is about them. That's kind of like business 101. And if you're listening to what they're saying and you're plugging in and you're making the communication about them and not about you, you can often guide the conversation in a way where they can find ways to work with you, and they can talk themselves into working with you. So how can you provide value to them? Okay, with that, we do have sessions for the next 2 weeks, and then I am scrambling to get some things put together after August 4th, but next week we're going to be talking about insurance. I think I might be in the coolest temperature weather there, because I'm going to be in Alaska next week. And then the week after that, we will be doing office space. And so I think that's the way we'll go. So with that, I'm going to stop the recording and we'll do a chat. Looks like we're going to have just enough time to chat in the room and not break out.